Hello everyone, welcome to Achievers IAS classes. Today we'll be discussing an important issue in depth which was in news this week, and that is regarding liquidity, insolvency and bankruptcy. Liquidity refers to the capital available with a financial institution, while insolvency is the situation where the debtor is not in a position to pay back the creditor. Bankruptcy is the legal declaration of insolvency, and therefore insolvency refers to a financial condition while bankruptcy is a legal position. As you are already aware, the burden of non-performing assets has severely affected the liquidity situation by negatively impacting both the bank's balance sheets as well as the balance sheets of the corporate sector, which has been termed as the twin balance sheet syndrome. The cost of raising NPAs on the economy are multiple and can be mainly grouped under the fiscal cost, the economic cost, and the political cost. The fiscal cost refers to the government support to sick and inefficient industries through subsidies like bailouts, loans, etc., which increases the borrowing of the government, which in turn increases the fiscal deficit, thereby leading to increased interest rate and crowding out of the private sector. The economic cost is the opportunity cost to the economy because of the inefficient use of the human and capital resources in sick industries, which provides the consumer with inferior goods at higher costs. And finally, the political cost is when the government tries to bail out such sick firms, which can be seen as favoring the rich and corporate sector with public money. In order to address these costs, the economic survey suggests the 4R strategy, which is recognition, recapitalization, resolution, and reform. Recognition is the identification of the non-performing assets, while recapitalization refers to capital infusion into the public sector banks. Resolution refers to the liquidation of the sick enterprises. And finally, reform is the various governance and structural reforms in the financial sector which are needed to prevent or minimize future NPAs. While the financial health of scheduled commercial banks in both the public and private sector have been in use for the rising levels of NPA, this week we also saw that the non-banking financial companies also have certain structural problems which, if left unaddressed, can negatively affect the economy. The recent default of the infrastructure leasing and financial services over its various debt obligations has raised serious questions about the functioning of the regulators and has also exposed the underlying weakness in the non-banking financial company sector, which has depended heavily on low-cost, short-term debt financing, which is not a sustainable business model. Because at a time when both international and domestic interest rates continue to rise, these NBFCs have come under pressure and their profit margins have reduced due to the rise in borrowing costs. NBFCs were seen as an alternative to traditional banking in certain sectors because the commercial banks were troubled with rising NPAs. However, the recent liquidity crisis in the NBFC sector has raised serious questions on the NBFC model of financing. While the government has decided to replace the management of the defaulting company, the banking sector, namely the RBI, the National Housing Bank, and the State Bank of India, have decided to increase the supply of liquidity in order to keep the interest rates under control. While offering such easy money may be a welcome measure to ease the liquidity crisis, but the prolonged supply of low-cost funds to the NBFC sector creates the risk of building an unsustainable bubble of debt in various sectors of the economy, and any eventual state bailouts could fuel a moral hazard as other financial institutions may also expect a similar measure if they were to default in future. Therefore, policymakers should focus on taking steps to address the structural problems which contributed to the crisis, like widening the borrower base of the NBFCs, which, as you know, have been banned from accepting deposits from customers. By allowing NBFCs to accept deposits, these institutions can tap into more reliable sources of funding, and also avoid any liquidity crisis in the future. Given this background of the financial sector, one of the important pieces of legislation which was brought in to address the financial health of the economy is the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. The Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code sets up the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Resolution Board of India, which regulates the information utilities which would store the facts about the lenders and the lending process in order to facilitate the insolvency process, and also it regulates the insolvency professionals who are licensed to carry out the resolution processes. The code seeks to shift the emphasis from revival to resolution in order to ensure maximum assets are recovered from the debtor, thus helping the balance sheets of the creditor, which in this case is the financial entity. This would go a long way in helping resolve the NPA crisis because it speeds up both the recoveries as well as the restructuring procedures due to a time limit of 270 days within which the process has to be completed. Further, as per the code, the Debt Recovery Tribunal will deal with the individual insolvency cases, while the National Company Law Tribunal will deal with corporate insolvency, thereby providing an institutional and a clear cut process for the insolvency proceedings. Therefore, the fixed time period and the predictable procedural methods will encourage creditors to join the collective insolvency resolution rather than initiate individual actions. This will not only improve the investment climate but also free up banks' resources for other productive uses and therefore result in a positive impact on the economy. Also, the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code will improve the ease of doing business as it provides an easy exit option for insolvent and sick firms, thereby facilitating entrepreneurs to start or exit a startup business. Therefore, the IBC is a significant step which is expected to boost economic growth, but a lot remains to be done in order to tackle the rising NPAs with respect to the governance reforms, particularly with respect to public sector banks, in order to find a long term solution for the problem. On that note, I'm wrapping up today's news analysis. Do like, share, and comment to support this initiative. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day.